all my melanated friends. I've always understood melanin as something that we all have in our skin. Okay, let's just see here. Let's just look into this a little bit. Melanin is the pigment that is responsible for our beautiful variety of skin tones and shades, eye colors, and hair colors. However, when we discuss melanin, the discussion rarely includes its actual biological benefits. And recently, the darker skinned people, or I guess we're supposed to call them melanated now. You know, back in the day, they were called Negroes. Negro just means dark, black, something like that. And then they were called colored people. They were colored. I guess I didn't have any color. I was considered white, no color. Well, I've never been that. I have pink tones and peachy tones in my skin. I'm not white. I do not identify as a white. I don't like the color white for very many things. Anyway, the labels that have been put on us. Then it got changed. What was it next? People of color, yeah, and then, I don't know, all these different names that have been assigned. Now you call us this, now you call us that. So, makes no sense. It's ridiculous. Names to separate and divide us against each other, classify us, label us. What is melanin? A type of complex pigment that in humans is responsible for producing the pigmentation of our hair, skin, and eyes. Although melanin is usually discussed as a signal pigment, there are two types that contribute to pigmentation of the hair, skin, and eyes of humans and animals. Eumelanin and pheomelanin, something like that. The eumelanin pigment is associated with dark tones such as brown and black. Pheomelanin, the pigment associated with alternate hues such as red and yellow. Okay, my grandson, especially two of them, they have some dark brown skin with these reddish and yellow tones. Just beautiful skin color. All my grandchildren have different shades of pigmentation that are just, they're all beautiful. A third type of melanin called neuromelanin exists within the human brain and gives pigment to the structures in this area. Wow, pigment in our brain even. Okay, let's see here. Talks about the cells that is produced in melanocytes and what are the benefits? Protection against UV light. Now, this takes on an approach that sunlight is very bad, very harmful, very damaging. So despite the many variations in human skin, hair, and eye color, almost all humans have roughly the same number of melanocytes, whatever. However, the people with the dark skin tones have melanosomes that are higher in number, larger in size, and more pigmented than those with light skin tones. So there's all this variety. So if you don't have enough melanin in your skin or in your body, yeah, I've seen people who, have a defect and they can't get in the sun at all because they have no melanin. It's very rare, and who knows what's caused that. But all the people have melanin to a certain extent or other. So over here, the health benefits of sunlight. So it promotes the growth of plants and crops, keeps us warm. It's essential for life. Yes, I enjoy the feeling of sunlight. Most people do. And many health benefits. So yes, people have been prompted to be cautious about spending time in the sun. We know that. That's been pumped into our heads. The sun causes cancer. The sun does this. The sun does that. Not good for you. Stay out of the sun. Wear those sunglasses. Don't let any light in your eyes. But to maintain healthy levels of vitamin D, you need sunlight. And to enjoy mental health, good mental health, positive mental health, you have to have sunlight. So it also supports healthy bones, calcium levels, reduces inflammation, supports the immune system and glucose metabolism. Wow, that's cool. Vitamin D comes from the sun, and some of the supplements are real bogus. Garbage. Don't do nothing in the way of vitamin D, but maybe do some other things that we don't want. And I've even learned that the sunlight penetrates down into the body and kills parasites and stuff like that. It's very important. Researchers have noted a link between exposure to the sun and lower blood pressure levels. Oh, it'll reduce your blood pressure if you have high blood pressure, huh? It'll balance it out. Wow. It's just miraculous what happens when we're in the sun. When the sun reaches our bodies. Lowers the following diseases and protects against diabetes, multiple sclerosis, cancer, all kinds of cancers, supports better sleep, and sets the circadian rhythms by regulating the levels of serotonin and melatonin. Wow. Makes you feel good to be in the sun. And people get used to not being in the sun, and they're so sick and unhealthy most of the time that they feel sick when they get in the sun, so they don't want to be in the sun anymore. Wow. The sun promotes a sensation of well-being and improving the mood, boosts the immune system, relieves pain, promotes relaxation, heals wounds, helps you feel more alert, and it helps you rest when you need to, too. increasing job satisfaction when a person's workplace has access to sunlight. That is very true. Reduces depression. Okay, so now, blocking the sun.
Stopping climate change. No. Now the White House says blocking the sun might be the answer, but what would that look like?
Interesting. Boy,
Take it.
I tell you, when I first started reading this article, it was like I just started diving in, and then it was like offshoot articles and this and that. So let's talk about this. On October 13th, the White House announced it was funding a 5-year research plan with about something called...
Nice day on the 13th.
Scientists urging drastic cuts to our fossil fuel use say we're not on pace to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. As a result, some of them now support controversial technologies that could blunt the Earth's rising temperatures, broadly known as geoengineering. As senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy reports, the basic idea is to dim the sun.
I'm going to put this on, hold it shut.
Yep.
On a recent morning along San
3 weeks
Francisco
ago.
Bay, two self-described tech guys
I mean, we're definitely not scientists.
launched a small but provocative experiment.
It's pathetic, but it's a start.
Luke Eiseman and Andrew Song are the duo behind Make Sunsets. Its mission is pretty clear. They sent a weather balloon filled with small amounts of sulfur dioxide 12 miles up into the stratosphere.
There we go.
When the balloon pops, the particles released reflect sunlight, theoretically and microscopically cooling Earth.
Should a couple of tech bros be the guys experimenting with this with no scientific background?
No, this should absolutely be something that is well-funded and done in responsible labs with adults and international consensus. I'll be thrilled to...
Doesn't everything start with just a couple of tech guys in the basement or the garage or somewhere?
shut this company down in the off chance that that happens. In the meantime, we have to take action.
The work of Make Sunsets is a stunt, a provocation.
Peter Frumhoff is a climate scientist at Harvard. He says Make Sunsets has drawn attention to geoengineering as a potential response to rising global temperatures and runaway climate change.
I think of solar geoengineering as the worst possible way to address climate change that we need to take seriously.
What exactly is solar geoengineering?
A set of proposed technologies to rapidly cool the Earth by reflecting sunlight back into space.
The idea is based on the cooling effect of volcanic eruptions. When Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines erupted in 1991, it spewed 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the sky. That reflected so much sunlight, global temperatures dropped by an entire degree the following year.
So one notion is that we could mimic those volcanic eruptions by sending specially equipped airplanes into the stratosphere to do exactly the same thing.
The U.S. government is now flying high-altitude planes through the stratosphere to study what sun-blocking gases may already be there. Microsoft founder Bill Gates...
Yeah, the gases are already there because you've been spraying them out of those planes for a long time.
Gates backed a major project at Harvard using balloons to deploy aerosols, but tests were put on hold after some pushback. And while it may seem far-fetched, a recent United Nations report seriously considers using giant space mirrors to deflect sunlight, while other scientists propose mining moon dust and launching it at the sun. At the Palo Alto Research
Now that's a great idea. Mine that moon dust.
Center in Silicon Valley, this white tent is a makeshift lab for experiments with something called marine cloud brightening.
This will generate the plume that will contain the aerosols.
It injects salt water into clouds over the ocean.
The idea is you'll make the clouds a little brighter and that will reflect more sunlight back up into the atmosphere?
Exactly. That's the idea.
Those effects could be beneficial or they could be negative.
Kelly Wanzer runs Silver Linings, an organization advocating for research into climate interventions like cloud brightening. But she says we need to quickly curb our planet-warming fossil fuel emissions because dimming the sun isn't a long-term solution. It's a sign of desperation.
This would not be the first choice.
No, or third or fourth choice. You have to compare it to overloading the system with warming and the environmental system starting to break down, which is where we're sitting on the edge of.
This is something that might provide some cooling and buy us some time to rapidly shift away from fossil fuels.
That's right. But there are a lot of things that we don't know. How does the climate system respond if you do that over a long period of time?
If it all sounds like science fiction, well, it was.
18 years I've hated the train.
The 2013 film Snowpiercer depicted geoengineering gone awry, turning the planet into a dystopian snow globe and confining humanity to a high-speed train. Climate scientists are divided on geoengineering. In dueling public letters, one side calls for accelerated research, while the other wants it banned, warning the possible deployment of solar geoengineering by individual nations would be frightening and inequitable.
Solar geoengineering is unprecedented. It will impact everyone.
Suchi Talati is a former Energy Department official. She now runs an organization pushing for developing nations to have a voice in decisions about geoengineering. Many of these countries have been disproportionately impacted by climate change.
I think right now the global north is entirely dominating the conversation and speaking on behalf of a lot of different communities and countries in the global south. And I think that's incredibly dangerous and incredibly disrespectful.
I think what we really need is an international conversation, right? Solar geoengineering is a desperate measure and one that we should make every effort to avoid.
Peter Frumhoff says,
It's been going on. What are you talking about? Bunch of liars.
We also need to speed up the clean energy transition so we don't have to rely on risky and rogue experiments.
Ready? Put it down here.
In an attempt to supervise the sun. For CBS Saturday Morning, I'm Ben Tracy in San Francisco.
It's fantastic. I mean, so much to think about. Yeah. Snowpiercer, by the way, really good movie.
Yeah, really.
Haven't seen it. But as he said, it does sound like, I mean, giant space mirrors shooting out moon dust. It does sound like science fiction, but we're there.
What does it say, though, that we're there or we're talking about these kinds of efforts and how desperate and last-ditch efforts these are in order to save our planet?
Yeah, a big question mark. Also, too, who will ultimately regulate all of this? And how are we going to come together and figuring that part of it out?
And so, blocking the sun. Let me just show you my little onions. This is the last of some onions that I had in the garage that were there for the winter. And they started sprouting and growing, a few of them. You see how pale they are? You see how pale that is? From no sunlight, no light, being in a dark garage. Sickly pale look on the sprouts. So what do you think happens to us when they block the sun? And they're talking about putting these big mirrors up that reflect the sun back up and making it like a volcanic
that it resulted in something called the year without the summer. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that term before.
No, I haven't.
Back in 1816, the year without a summer, because after that volcanic eruption, the temperature of the earth dropped 5.4 degrees. Okay? Yeah, there was a lot of loss of life, there was a lot of loss of crops and everything. But moving forward, what scientists did, they started to measure this and they said, wait a minute. So the particulates and the aerosols from volcanoes actually blotted out the sun. So that's where this study is coming from. What they want to do is basically block out the sun by spraying aerosols into the stratosphere to reflect sunlight, just as, say, a volcano would do if a volcano was to erupt violently. So the United Nations is on board. They've recognized the potential of this, But there are so many critics that also say, wait a minute, time out. You could cause even more of a problem by experimenting with this. Seems like you got a question. Go ahead.
No, my question is, how do you study this without doing it?
So here's
They're
the way
doing it.
They didn't go too much into the article about this, except for this. Here's what's going to happen. And they'll start in a laboratory, obviously a laboratory. Sulfur dioxide, other particulates, things that come out of volcanoes. They're going to take those and they're going to try to find a way to block some of the sunlight out, and push it back out into space. Once they can do that in a controlled laboratory, I would expect them to try it somewhere on this Earth away from everybody, just to kind of see what it's doing to the reflectivity of the sunshine. To be honest with you, though, here are some of the potential problems you could have. What if it works and you have a button and you can press these aerosols to come and go? What if you dip the temperatures too low? Things die. What if it intensifies weather events, an unforeseen consequence? There's so many different things. Also, geoengineering, they've shown on studies, it also helps spread diseases. So there are a lot of negative impacts to putting these aerosols up in the stratosphere. But here's my attitude. 5 years of research. Let's get the pluses, let's get the minuses, and then move forward if we can, or just scrap it. You know what I mean? It's not going straight out there. They're going to research this for 5 years. They're going to figure this out. Sure. And what they're saying is that they aim to answer all the questions that you would have or I would have, pluses and minuses, before anything happens from there.
Okay.
But it's a start. It's a study. Okay. I think it's putting a Band-Aid on a bigger problem, but we'll talk about it in 5 years.
All right. All right, then. Thank you.
Yeah.
5 years. Bullshit. And all the dry, crusty ground that's around in the different countries, like Italy, in their food growing area. It's so dry and hard that even when these floods hit the last few days, the ground will not absorb that water. So it's doing no good. All the flooding that went on, that's going on right now, because the ground is so hard. Rock on. I think maybe what they're telling us is they're gonna continue to increase it and spray more and more until we have that long, dark winter that I think Trumpy talked about. As if it isn't dark enough right now. This has been a dark winter.